Live from McFarlanes in Sauk City, this is a Very Sauk Prairie Christmas, featuring Sauk Prairie area guests and special musical performances. Today's show is brought to you by McFarlanes, Sophie's Fine Jewelry and Gifts, Prairie Plumbing and Heating, Consumers Co-op, and Wyttenbach Meats. We invite you to stop out and join us at McFarlanes every Saturday at 10 a.m. now through December 23rd for this special live broadcast. Here's your host for a Very Sauk Prairie Christmas, Rauel LaBreche.
I don't know if I can do this show. Welcome, everyone. Ho, 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 ho. I'm so excited. I can literally, palpably excited. Kurt, can you believe it?
Oh, man, I'm with you.
I never get excited. But today I am really excited because we started out today knowing that we were going to have Jerry Apps on the show, and we knew that we were going to have the Prairie Spies on the show. And then, lo and behold, Santa Claus must have come in the door or something, because we also got Susan Apps, Bodilly, the daughter of Jerry Apps. I mean, how great is that? We have a family affair going on here, right? It just does not get any better than this. And what a fun show it's going to be. We have a stack of books to talk about. We have a recipe box to talk about. Those of you that aren't here can't see all this wonderful stuff, so that's a hint. That's a clue. Get down to McFarlanes and see all the stuff that's going on. And Jerry's going to be here later throughout, after we get done with the radio show today.
Until 2.
Until 2, yep. Signing, autographing, whatever you want. Of course, you'll sell books to people. And will you autograph their hands and things like that if they want?
Whatever they want.
Whatever they want.
Oh, no.
That's nice of you. He's a full-service autographer. That's what he is. So, but Jerry, I don't think there's much introduction necessary for you, really, is there? Susan, do you think there's an introduction necessary?
I think everybody knows Jerry Apps.
You would hope so, right?
Right.
So you've been around long enough that they ought to by now, right? So, Jerry, you are professor emeritus at the UW Wisconsin, but I think where I really got to know you was through your history books. You're Wisconsin agricultural expert, really, a historian in many, many ways, right?
Well, that's true, but I also, I'm trying to capture the culture of rural Wisconsin, in fact, rural America, through my stories. So I do both straight history as well as capturing people's stories.
Sure.
And I teach storytelling, and I, of course, write a lot of stories myself.
That's one of the books that you have, actually,
exactly.
Is How to Tell Your Story.
And I'm a firm believer that everybody has a story to tell, and I'm working hard to help people do that.
Yeah.
Through my own storytelling, as well as helping people learn how to do it.
Sure.
And the book is all about that.
It's and really plain sense. I mean, I love that you have questions in here about what games did you play at school and at home. Any stories associated with those games?
Just ordinary stuff.
Yeah, but they're the things that often are the richest in terms of what they tell you about a person.
It's the little things in life that are often overlooked.
Yeah.
And when we write about them and talk about them, people come awake and they begin thinking about the little things that made a difference in their lives.
Sure. And I mean, obviously there are people here today that are in our radio audience, so hopefully get one of these books if you have a story to tell. Even, do you recall any trips that you made with your family is another question here. I just flipped open randomly to a page here, okay? So this is the kind of gold that's in here. Describe Christmas or some other holiday important to your family. Recall a story when you were particularly happy or one where you were particularly sad. So, which is actually part of our topic today. Our theme today is Christmas on the Farm. Sure. So, which is, we brought Jerry in particular for that. But Susan, I'm hoping we have a farm country cookbook to talk about too, with some Christmas recipes as well. Mm-hmm. So there'll be lots of fun stuff there, right?
Right, there's a whole chapter on Christmas recipes.
Well, I can't go wrong. So, Jerry, how did you get started on this? Where did this journey begin for you?
It goes way back to the 1930s. Ooh. And when our home farm had no electricity.
So picture, if you will, a snowy night in 1930.
And no indoor plumbing, and heated our house with wood stoves. And whenever several of us got together, relatives or neighbors, it was storytelling.
Sure.
That was not only our form of entertainment, but it was a way of keeping track of each other, to find out who's doing well and who's not. Mm-hmm. Often that was expressed through a story. And I listened carefully to these stories that my My dad was an exemplary storyteller, as were my uncles. We had a neighbor who was a wonderful storyteller, but he stretched the truth a bit, and my mother always looked at him when asked about Bill. She would say, he's a downright liar. But
my mother did that with my dad. And she knew what she was talking about, I'm sure.
And but I love those stories. I mean, he really knew how to spin a story. And many people do not know that I also write novels. I write fiction. Okay. In fact, my seventh novel is coming out from UW Press in the spring. It's called Cold as Thunder. People should look for that to see another side of my writing that also has a historic base. But it's a made-up story.
Was that the start of your writing career with fiction, or did you start with...
No, I started by default, and the default was polio.
Okay.
Back in 1946 and 7, I had polio, and thus could not play baseball, and couldn't play basketball, and couldn't walk. My right leg was paralyzed. And what happened was one of my high school teachers, upon seeing me just miserable because I couldn't do what all the other boys were doing especially, he suggested that I might take a course in typewriting. And so I said, why would I want to do that? No boy would ever be caught dead taking a typewriting class. That's for girls.
Yeah, exactly, Jerry.
No, it was.
Jerry, girls, hello, high school.
Yes. Well, here I am in the typewriting class, all girls. And I said to one of my friends, I said, well, I'm stuck in this class with all girls. And he said, really?
The light bulb goes off.
Well, as it turned out, I loved typing because, and I was smoking the girls on the typewriting test because...
Strong fingers.
I was milking cows by hand. Yeah. And these girls had these weak little fingers, especially the pinky. Yeah. They could not make the A work on the typewriter. Well, I was smoking them. I could do the A. There's a semicolon on the other side. Nobody knew what to do with that anyway, so that didn't make any difference. And also, the typewriting class was the newspaper office because you know how to type. Sure. And we produced the Rosebud. Wild Rose High School.
Holy cow.
Oh, really?
So that's where Citizen Kane got his name from,
right?
The
Rosebud.
The Rosebud.
And by the time I was a junior, I was the assistant editor. By the time I was a senior, I was the editor, and I had my staff of reporters, and I was writing all the editorials, and I should have been censored, but nobody knew how to do that, and nobody knew about plagiarism either. I stole stuff from the Reader's Digest and the Farm Journal and Wisconsin Agriculture, and people said, that paper's really getting good. And I thought, we've been working on it.
Yeah. You've been working at it, working all angles, it sounds like. Yeah.
So that's how I really got started.
So they had an app for that back then, didn't they?
Let's not get into that.
Yeah, right. Well, so many questions come from that, but let's move along, because I think you're probably safe from the statute of limitations alone from all that plagiarism, right?
I hope so.
Jerry, I'm trying. Oh, we've got plenty of time here. Let's talk about your newest book a little bit, just because I think it really has it resounds, I think, with people here, especially McFarlanes. Well, it's maybe not the newest book, because the cookbook is the
newest one.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay. But this one came out in the spring. In fact, I remember the last time you were here on the show was back this time last year.
That's correct.
We did a similar kind of format show, and you were talking about this just being almost coming out, and maybe the movie you had just
did a companion hour-long documentary based on that book as well.
Okay.
About the same time.
And the title is Never Curse the Rain, which my understanding is that came from something your dad used to say.
Well,
right?
it went back to back to the latter years of the Depression when I was a little kid. We in central Wisconsin, especially in this area, maybe somewhat as well, we had terrific windstorms and a huge drought. And the land was just moving in central Wisconsin in those days. And we pumped water with a windmill. And as long as the wind blew, we had water. But then one day, the windmill quit blowing. And our cattle had no water. Neither the hogs and the horses and the chickens in the family. And there's nothing, I tell the story in the book, there's nothing more profound and pitiful than the sound of cattle that do not have water. They were bellowing all day and all night. And the windmill was not turning, and my dad would be looking to the west, hoping there might be a cloud with a little rain and a little wind, but there was no cloud. And the wind did not come back up for a while. And so he called. We had telephone in those days, no electricity, we had party line telephone, battery operated. We called the neighbor, Alan Davis, down the half mile or so down the road. And we knew that Alan lived in a little valley and the windmill didn't work there very well, so he was one of the only neighbors in the community with a gasoline engine. Okay. And we loaded up a bunch of empty milk cans, 10-gallon milk cans, put them on a wagon. The team drove down there and filled them with water. Came back, had some water for the cattle, and my dad quickly looked for a used engine, gasoline engine, put on our pump. But he said at that time, and he said it many other times, well, if we were, as two brothers, complaining that it was a rainy day, he would remind us, never curse the rain. Never curse the rain. And that's the premise for the book. And it's much more than that. It's about how this world depends on water. Mm-hmm. And how, if we're looking ahead, just in the Midwest and in this country and around the world, water is going to be one of the major issues. Just think about what's happening in California right now, today, as they desperately pray for water because the state is burning up. They haven't had rain for a long time. So the theme of the book is the importance of water. And it comes back from my own personal experiences. And I tell stories about how water was important for fishing, for general recreation, swimming and all that kind of stuff. Sure. But if you were a farmer, you today as well, unless you are a big-time irrigator, you depend on water. Water is the key. How long can we live without water? A day or two, that's all. Water is just essential. That's what the book is about.
Well, and so totally outside of your control. You know, that I think that's one thing. I grew up in the city. I grew up in Milwaukee. You know, so coming to McFarlanes.
Sorry about that.
Many people feel the same way. I grew up in Bayview, though, which Bayview was a little different. So we were very good people there with good hearts and strong constitutions.
I'm very pleased to hear that.
Yeah, very much so.
Especially the Constitution part.
Yeah, exactly. So we had a constitutional every morning, in fact. So, but no, one of the things that I appreciated was having parents that had a small town background, and they were always people that, like the farmers here, they had an understanding that there's so much outside of our control that we need to be appreciative of the things that are in our lives rather than be upset about the things that are not. You know, there's and rain is, we so take water, man, for granted. My gosh. Yeah. Especially up here in the upper Midwest where we've got the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes have something like 20% of all the water. Yeah, the fresh water in the world. And we have the largest collection of freshwater lakes in the world. People in Arizona would love to put a pipeline from Lake Superior to Phoenix. Yeah, water rights. Wow, there's battles going on about that already, I'm sure. The book is about all those kinds of things. Wonderful stuff. So, well, you know, our musical guests have been sitting there so patiently, so nicely, which, you know, and we actually have authors over here. We have authors on both sides of the set today, because Kurt Miney, those of you that don't know this, Kurt has a wonderful book on Aldo Leopold, talking about water and land conservation and all those wonderful things, and wonderful book. If you want to know more about Aldo Leopold, that is the book, and it's available here at McFarlanes, your not-so-normal hardware store. So, right? So, Kurt, you have this group you've put together. Prairie Spies have been together for, what, a couple of years now, right?
Oh, well, Scott and I started 30 years ago in Leopold Shack.
Ooh.
Late on Monday nights after dinners and beers. And then Jeff ended up at the Crane Foundation, and he fell in with us, and we've kind of drifted in and out together over the years, but we keep playing music.
Boy, it's a great thing to have just guys you can hang out with and have food and drink beers and play music. Does life get any better than that? So you've got some Christmas music.
Yeah, right? Well, you asked us if we could put together some songs, and we got 3 or 4 to do for you. A couple of them you'll know, a couple of them you won't, maybe. But the thing about Christmas songs, of course, is you only play them once a year, so I had to start practicing.
Get as much mileage.
Right after Thanksgiving dishes were done, I started practicing. so we'll start off with one that everybody knows this one. So one of my favorites. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart be light. From now on, our troubles will be out of sight. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Make the Yuletide gay. Oh, from now on, our troubles will be miles away. Here we are as in olden days, happy golden days of yore, and faithful friends who are dear to us travel near to us once more. Through the years we all will be together, if the fates allow. Won't you hang a shining star upon the highest bough, and have yourself a merry little Christmas now. Come on, Scott.
When the winter winds blow, you'll need to be able to fight back. Take that, you blowhard! Storms won't stop you when you have friends at McFarlanes in Sauk City. We can help you fight back with Simplicity and Toro snowblowers, Boss snow plows, attachments for trucks, plus shovels, blowers, and ice melt. Rally round, snow warriors, and fight back at McFarlanes, 780 Carolina Street, 1 block south of Highway 12. Open 7 days a week, where service is a family tradition.
Want to make your home a more comfortable place, but don't think you can afford a top brand heating and cooling system? Well, Carrier has the right solutions for every budget. When you turn to your Carrier expert, they'll show you our full lineup of best-in-class home comfort systems and help you pick the one that best fits into your home budget. Because in this economy, who couldn't use a little more comfort? Carrier. Turn to the experts.
See Prairie Plumbing and Heating at 402 John Q. Adams Street in Sauk City. Call 643-8531.
Merrimac Communications says, take a look at us. Look at Merrimac Communications for blazing fast fiber optic to the home delivery of cable television, internet, and telephone. Fiber optic networks can provide internet speeds of up to 100 millibytes per second. Cutting-edge voice over IP provides crystal clear home and business telephone service. Our cable television offers a new fully digital television system with 200-plus channels and HD. Merrimac Communications, a locally owned service provider with very competitive rates. Check our service areas at merr.com.
Live from our studios at McFarlanes in Sauk City, this is a Very Sauk Prairie Christmas on 99.7 Max FM.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas.
On WRPQ 99.7 Max FM. Thanks for joining us this morning here on a very special, very merry Sauk Prairie Christmas. I keep putting the merry in there because it's really just advertised as, if you have one of these brochures, a very Sauk Prairie Christmas. But I can't say it without merry in there too. I don't know. Maybe I should change the logo because it just gets me going when we, Mary needs to be there. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't invite Mary. I don't know what happened. So something happened there to make that. We have a great, wonderful guest this morning. 2 guests that we didn't have. We had one apps coming, and we didn't have enough apps, so we invited Susan. Susan came along to Susan Apps Bodilli, who's Jerry's wonderful daughter, and has written a book with her dad, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. And our musical guests this morning are Kurt Miney and the Prairie Spies. So don't go anywhere, folks. You want to tune your radio in to 99.7 FM Max and just stay there. Max FM. Drew, why do I keep doing that? It's Max FM, and I keep saying, Max, you would think it would be easy for me. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, can you, Jerry?
Well, some people do, but
much to their chagrin, right? So now you two wrote a book together. And this, I have to tell you, this, I hadn't gotten this book yet. I hadn't opened it until this morning. And my wife has been telling me about it because my wife she's the culture animal in our family. Go figure, right? So she knows what's going on. She knows anything that's important is going on. I just babble through life. So, but this is just fun. When you open it up, it right away says, I'm a fun cookbook to read. I want to know more about this. Because it not only does it have really wonderful things.
On what page does it say that?
Well, when you can open a book, when you can open a book and one of the pages you get to is chocolate sauerkraut cake.
That cake is delicious.
That's really good.
I mean, I'm not a sauerkraut eater. Let me tell you, when my wife makes sauerkraut with pork chops, I'm always like, will you warn me 2 days ahead so I can get prepared and then warn me the day of so that I can be gone that day? Because I just can't even stand the smell of it. But this actually sounds like there's got to be something to this.
We have a whole chapter on sauerkraut.
Sauerkraut, huh? Oh, very good, then we'll go into that chapter, huh? Oh, unka. Yeah, here we go. So you guys, how did this come about? I suspect it has something to do with this recipe box, which looks to me to be vintage Jerry Epps, or is this before?
Vintage Eleanor Epps.
Yes,
it's my dad's mother's recipes that are in the cookbook. And the idea actually came from the editor at the Historical Society Press, because she asked Jerry if he ever thought of doing a cookbook. He said,
I do not do cookbooks.
And he doesn't cook. So there was a problem
I heard
there.
Beans and bacon are like
don't forget the sauerkraut.
So
that's the extent.
So he agreed to write the stories, which he is excellent at writing and telling.
Okay.
And he asked me if I'd work on the recipes, and I said, sure, that'll be easy. And it wasn't. It wasn't easy at all. It ended up still being a lot of fun, and we're really proud of the cookbook that you have there in your hands, because it did turn out to be just a lovely book.
Well,
but it's not organized like a regular cookbook at all. Anybody who cooks knows that a regular cookbook has a salad chapter and a meat chapter, and a desserts chapter, and this is really organized into 3 sections by stories. Their whole first part is kitchen memories, and the second part is everyday foods, and the third part is gatherings and holidays. So it was interesting because we started pulling recipes out of my grandmother's recipe box, and I would mention something like you said, chocolate sauerkraut cake, and then my mom and my dad and I would sit down and start talking, and the recipe would actually trigger a story that I hadn't heard before. And believe it or not, there are still Jerry Epps stories no one has heard. And there are new stories in the cookbook that you haven't heard, so you'll definitely want to get a book. Well, it's really organized in a lovely way. And then I chose some images from our family slides and from some other places to include in there. It just turned out great. It's a really fun book to read. So if you don't cook, you'll really enjoy reading the stories. And if you do cook, there's lots of really excellent recipes.
And then you can avoid the stories.
Why in the world would anyone do that? That's part of the joy of the whole thing, isn't it? Well, and I'm particularly taken by the part 3, gatherings and holidays, because you have things like threshing day. Is a whole section, and silo filling and corn shredding.
And those particular days, if you know anything about farming, were heavy cooking days for the person in the kitchen. So especially, like my dad said, he grew up in a kitchen with no running water, no electricity, no indoor plumbing, and a wood stove. So the interesting thing about the recipes is that they don't have pan sizes. There's no oven temperature. So the one that I have this banana bread recipe here, and it has just a list of ingredients, and then it just says bake in a slow oven. So my mom and I looked at these, and we immediately realized this is going to take a little work to translate these for people to actually cook today. Because what is a slow oven when you can turn the thermometer on an oven today?
Well, if you ask one of the kids here, I'm sure a slow oven would be like, am I an oven or am I an air conditioner?
Exactly. It's a different meaning. Exactly. Like, So we did figure out how to test the recipes and translate them so people could cook with them today. It was a hard work, but a lot of fun. Especially because we've done several book talks now, and it's interesting because I saw people shaking their heads and they know exactly what I'm talking about. If you have any kind of an old recipe, it says something like a pinch of this or a dash of that, or use what you have on hand, like in a recipe, like what you've got left over from another meal. And there's many secrets that cooks who have been cooking for a while have, like use your potato water in your gravy at a holiday. And use a little bit of bacon grease left over from breakfast and save that for later in the day. And that's not written down anyplace.
My grandma used to make green beans. She would make bacon in the morning for breakfast and then green beans for lunch. And she would fry the green beans in that bacon fat. Oh, my Lord. You've never had green beans.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
It's like, Grandma, can you make green beans today? You know, and it was like, green beans tomorrow, green beans for breakfast. It was just incredible. Well, I know you. One of the other things here is chapter 31, housewarming for new neighbors. Just the idea of housewarming for new neighbors.
Isn't that a nice idea?
It is. It is. It's just something, in our super rushed society today. How do you take time for that?
Yeah, and we always did that. There's also a section in there on a shivaree. And a lot
do you know
of
what
people,
a shivaree is?
A lot of people don't know about how many in the audience know about a shivaree? Well,
thank you. Thank you for making me feel dumb and slow. I'm very slow.
Well,
I know shivaree.
We're going to bring you up to date.
Thank you.
On what a shivaree is.
Shivaree, shivara, isn't there?
No. He'll tell you what it is.
It's when a young person in the community marries. And the whole community gathers at their place on an evening shortly after the marriage, when they know they're home.
Okay.
And they're not supposed to know what night this is. And everybody gathers in very quietly, and they're waiting for the lights to go out in the home.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah.
And so now
I can see where this is going.
Now the lights are out. And immediately this group of mostly all farm folk, shotguns go off, deer rifles go off, that kind of a tub gets pounded on.
Clothes get put back on.
It's just a big noisy deal. And, of course, the young couple comes downstairs, and they are expecting this. And they're expecting to provide beer and soft drinks. And the rest of us bring all kinds of things. We have the menus in there for those kinds of events.
Some recipes
along
for
with the
shivarees,
recipes.
Yes.
So, let's reinstitute the shivaree.
Well,
there's a song, shivaree, shivara. Yeah, shivara. Remember that song?
We didn't go quite that far.
We could get that going with a
the
shotgun
young couple
blast,
would probably moved.
Where is shivarees? I'm looking for that here. We've got quilting bees and ladies' aid.
Have you ever heard of an index?
I have. Oh. That I have heard of. That would be right before tea, wouldn't it?
While he's looking, I'll tell you something funny about the index. There were several recipe cards in the box that just said hot dish. And anybody from the Midwest knows what a hot dish is. It's right? But it's funny because when I opened up the index, when I got a copy of the book myself, if you look at hot dish in the back, it says sea casseroles. It doesn't even list the pages of the hot dishes. It's like you had to explain what a hot dish was first before you could go find the recipe.
And while he's looking for shivaree, another thing along those lines, when the Wisconsin Historical Society Press market people went to Chicago to meet with the regional market folk, and there was a person there, market person from California, and he was paging through the book, and he comes to a section where we have a whole section on bologna. Bologna was a big deal in our family.
Bologna.
Ring bologna. This guy says, "What's this bologna? What is bologna anyway?" He had never heard of bologna.
I'm sorry I had to spurt that out because you told me that story right before. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm a slow oven. What can I say?
Did you find shivaree?
I did. Shivaree. I used the index. So thank you for that. And it was on page 201, just where the index said it would be. There's shivaree talking about Arlen Hendrick, and he farmed a half mile, and he lived with his mother, and yada, yada, yada. But I see across from it is butterscotch oatmeal cookies. So if you're going to do something like a shivaree, bring the butterscotch oatmeal cookies, right?
Exactly. That's right.
That's kind of, okay. Because at least that makes it halfway worthwhile. I'm not sure. Upstairs light came on once more. Downstairs light. Arlen and Lorraine appeared at the door, smiling from ear to ear. Arlen had known a shivaree was coming. And she didn't. He just didn't know when. I'm sure Lorraine wondered what kind of neighborhood she moved into.
She was from Milwaukee, the poor thing.
See, that's why I didn't know about shivarees. We probably have blanked those out of society in Milwaukee because they are obviously evil. So
It was a friendly community gathering.
Friendly community gathering.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, tell that to the husband and the wife, I guess. You know,
It was a good reason to get together.
You know,
So,
it is
another celebration.
It is.
Right.
I think that's the neatest thing about this cookbook is that it's based on the little celebrations.
Exactly, and the good part is we have found out that recipes connect and food connect people,
Yeah.
especially at happy times like you were saying, like weddings and housewarmings and Christmas and Thanksgiving. But
Chivalries.
food also connects people at sad times.
Yeah.
And my dad has a lovely story about his grandparent dying and the food that was brought to the funeral. So even when people are sad or something tragic has happened in a neighborhood, it's still a story about the community coming together to support each other.
Sure.
And food just connects people. It makes you think of people that you've known in your past or people that you've known that were kind to you.
Right.
So I think it's a really important cookbook. It's not just a cookbook. It's a way to help people connect with each other.
I need to tell this story on Susan as well. Susie and my wife Ruth tested all of the recipes.
Okay.
Except one. And that one recipe that remains untested is how to fry a squirrel.
I just couldn't do it.
How many of you have had fried squirrel? Look at that.
This is interesting because every book talk we do, everybody else understands the fried squirrel. Or we've gotten into some really interesting discussions about which is better, fried squirrel or fried rabbit. And I did bake rabbit because I have access to rabbits from a farmer that I know. So
Sure. Well, and the French cook rabbit all the time, so maybe.
We do have squirrels in my backyard, but I didn't go capture one.
So little old Nutty the squirrel is getting ready to be cooked up today.
So anyway, the
But
rest.
the recipe's in the book.
Okay.
And the rest of the recipes are
Exactly.
well tested, and that one theoretically is correct.
Theoretically.
You'll have to try it. To find it out.
Or it could be fatal. We're not sure.
No,
Right?
no, no, it wouldn't be fatal.
Not fatal. Okay, good. Where do you, well, you know, on the last chapter here, I happen to notice food for thought. Tell me about food for thought.
Well, Susan, you started to say about tying families
Well,
together.
yeah, it's just a continuation of how we are thinking about people that care for us and how food is a way to connect people. And I started, whenever I think about cooking now, I approach it differently. Like I think you were saying earlier before we started talking that people are in a hurry and people rush and you're busy and you get home from work and, you know, gosh darn, you got to make something to eat for dinner. But
Right.
I start thinking about food in a different way now. And I actually put away my mixer and my Cuisinart and my gadgets. And I don't make cookies with anything but a wooden spoon now. And you really can mix up cookies without a mixer.
Yeah.
And everything that I did for this cookbook, I used a wooden spoon, a fork, a whisk, just your basic kitchen tools. And I tried to cook them the way my grandmother would have cooked them. I don't have a wood stove at home, obviously, but I tried to cook them
We
with...
sell those here if you're
Oh,
interested.
excellent.
We have one at the farm.
Okay.
Yeah,
I still
actually
cook
have-
on. I still cook on a wood.
And
stove.
doesn't that smell good? You know, when you
Oh,
have
yeah.
the wood stove
Yeah,
cookie,
yeah.
wood stove going in the morning, and you have your cast iron pan, and you throw some bacon in there. It's the best smell ever.
And some beans and some sauerkraut.
Yeah, that's the way my dad.
That's all
cooked
you
it.
need.
Yeah.
But I just feel like the food for thought part is that it makes you think of whoever is coming from your past, and when you're using old recipes, you're thinking and connecting to those people in your own family
Say a word
history.
about your connection to your grandmother. That you have an interesting comment on that.
Yeah, well, I just feel like when I'm in the kitchen and I'm using her recipes that I think about her, and I feel like she's still with me. And my mother's grandmother was also an excellent cook. So I just feel like those people remain with me when I use their recipes.
There's a thing in psychology I remember years ago. I studied psychology, which I don't ask me why, but I did, and got a bachelor's degree in it. But they talk about one of the strongest senses for reactivating old memories is the sense of smell.
Absolutely.
That you come in and you smell bread, that it just brings back a flood of memories. So speaking of a flood of memories, I just had a memory that you're going to, the Prairie Spies over there sitting across from me patiently and nicely, I have to say, Kurt, you have such a pleasant air about you this morning. Thank you.
I haven't had my coffee yet.
Smells pretty good this morning. He does.
Yeah, coffee.
I'm
But
nice until I have my coffee.
if I was looking at my notes, I would have seen that right now we're supposed to get a full piece of music out of you this segment.
yeah.
And I do not want to miss that because we had to tune out during your last one, and
Sorry.
I should just shut up so you can sing, right?
Should we ask the audience?
Yeah. Should I just shut up so he can play? Yeah. Derek Burrow shutting up. Yeah.
All right, let's do one. We're gonna do one. We're gonna do one that you may not know, but along about this time of year, I put this CD on for the first time, and I get the spirit. And this is a song that I've been playing for a few years by the great gospel singer, Mahalia Jackson. Thank you. So this is a song called "No Room at the Inn." And you're welcome to clap and sing if you feel the spirit. Come on. Well, there was no room, oh, at the inn. Well, there was no room, oh, at the inn. Now when her time had fully come for the Savior to be born, and there was no room, oh, at the inn. Now, according to the word, there was a virgin girl, mother of Jesus. She was wandering around the night. She was trying to find a place for the Savior to be born. There was no room, oh, at the inn. Where there was no room, oh, at the inn. Where there was no room, oh, at the inn. Now, when her time had fully come for the Savior to be born, there was no room, oh, at the inn. No, mother was worried. She began to moan, pray to be delivered, of her only son. She was very sad, I know, for she had no place to go. There was no room, oh, at the inn. Yeah, you got it, Rauel. Come on now. There was no room, oh, at the inn. No, there was no room, oh, no, down at the inn. Now, when her time had fully come for the Savior to be born, there was no room, oh, at the inn. Now that bellboy and the porter, the waitress and the cook will be witness one day in heaven to tell the things that Mary took. She was driven away, for she had no place to stay. There was no room, oh, at the inn. One more time, here we go. Where there was no room, oh, at the inn. No, there was no room, down at the inn. And when the time had fully come, now for the Savior to be born, there was no room, oh, at the inn. No, there was no room, down at the inn. No, there was no room, down at the inn. Mahalia.
I'm going to use this throughout the rest of the broadcast.
You got it.
So when Jerry
You're
says
now a
something,
member of the Prairie Spies.
well, when Jerry says something funny, I'm going to go. The rattlesnake approval, something like that. So thanks, Kurt. Prairie Spies, thank you. Wonderful, just fun. Thanks for giving me a toy to play with, because every actor needs a prop.
Hey,
So
old dog, new trick.
yeah. So we were talking before we went to that wonderful break about Old Farm Country Cookbook. I know there's probably more to tell about telling your story. Is there anything, that seems to me it all ties back to the Old Farm Country Cookbook.
Exactly. But I would like to say a few words about my mother's kitchen, because I find people find that interesting.
Sure.
And
please.
what a kitchen was like before indoor plumbing and before electricity and all that sort of thing. And in those days, and it's maybe more or less still true, when people came visiting to a farm home, they did not go in the front door. In fact, we had one. We had a front door in our house. It was nailed shut. You just couldn't come through the front door. If a city salesman had come, we knew immediately if it was a city person who did not understand farm people by coming to the front door. And my mother would let them knock on the front door. She'd ignore them. She would hide. She wouldn't know they were there. If they didn't know enough to come to the kitchen door, she didn't want to talk to them.
Right.
So
obviously not a slow oven there too. So
just to hold the slow oven bed.
Okay.
So you come through the front door, the back kitchen door, and just to the left was the party line telephone. How many in the audience know about a party line telephone? Most of you. Well, the party line telephone. People today think that social media are the thing. I tell you, we knew what social media were a long time before people identified it as such. Because if you had a party line telephone, you knew what was going on in your community. Sometimes you learn more than you wanted to know. Then as you turn to the left in our kitchen, you came upon the wood box, which was perpetually empty. And if you were a little kid, one of your first jobs, your first chores, was to keep the wood box full. Because right next to it was the wood stove with the warming oven. Remember the warming oven above? And the reservoir on the right side that had warm water? And the tea kettle, it was always on the stove, steaming away. Nobody in our family, we're German, nobody in our family had anything to do with tea. I never tasted tea. Nobody wanted any tea. The tea kettle had another purpose. It was the sole source of hot water. And a little bit of an aside, if you happen to have come down with a cold, and my mother was onto that. We would never, we had to be near death to go to the doctor. You just didn't go to the doctor. And so my mother would use the tea kettle. She'd pour a little tea kettle in, a little hot water in a glass, and add a jigger of whiskey to it, and maybe a little honey. Mm-hmm. And that was called a whiskey sling. Any of you remember the whiskey sling and will admit it to the folks sitting around you? Yeah. We would take a shot of whiskey. To this day, I cannot stand the smell of whiskey. I just can't. I really can't. The idea was that you would go upstairs and sweat, but before you went upstairs, and our room was not heated. It had a stovepipe coming up through it. But before we went upstairs, she would rub on our chests what? Skunk grease. Skunk grease. My uncle was a trapper, and somehow or another he had convinced each year a skunk to give up some of its grease. You have to think about that a minute here.
Can we take a break and think about that? Because I know we're close to having it, and skunk grease is something worth at least 2.5 minutes worth of contemplation before we complete the skunk grease story. Is that okay? Is that all right with everybody here?
Oh, whatever you want.
We're going to hold you guys in trepidation, and you just keep that thought, skunk grease. Skunk grease. As we take a break here to hear a word from our sponsors here on 99.7 Max FM.
People from all over South Central Wisconsin love Christmas shopping at Sophie's Fine Jewelry and Gifts on Highway 12 in the Baraboo Mini Mall. Sophie's goes out of their way to offer gifts just perfect for all those special someones out there. Jewelry featuring diamonds, emeralds, sapphires, rubies, and pearls, watches, leaded glassware, African baskets, and more. In-store financing and layaway service, even free gift wrapping. Choose the perfect gift at Sophie's Fine Jewelry and Gifts. Highway 12 in the Baraboo Mini Mall. Convenient out front parking.
Diesel fuel is diesel fuel, right? Wrong. If you use standard diesel fuel, you should know that switching to Cenex Premium Diesel can make a powerful difference in your trucks and farm equipment. Cenex Premium Diesel is specially formulated to optimize performance. It's proven to deliver more power and up to 5% better fuel economy. Plus, it contains a special additive formulated for the demands of today's modern engines to help reduce downtime and maintenance. To learn more, talk with your certified Cenex distributor, Consumers Co-op in Sauk City, or visit Cenex.com.
Fritz Wyttenbach here with Wyttenbach Meats in Prairie Sauk. We've got gift boxes to meet your gift-giving needs. Check out our website at wmeats.com to see this year's selection of gift boxes. You are always welcome to build your own gift box using our award-winning sausages and local items. If you are unsure, you can purchase a gift certificate in any amount. Who wouldn't love that? I'll let you in on a little secret. Santa likes Wyttenbach bacon. Better than cookies.
With your Max FM weather, I'm meteorologist Ashley O'Connor. Lots of sunshine today, but it will be cold with high temperatures only in the mid-20s. Gusty north winds near 30 miles per hour will keep wind chill values only in the single digits. Mainly cloudy skies this evening and overnight with low temperatures in the mid-teens. Generally cloudy but warmer tomorrow with highs in the low 30s. Weather is powered by Wall & Associates. If you owe back taxes, call 800-608-2285. Currently, it's 25.
Here in Wisconsin, we're made of hardy stock, and we say, let the cold winds blow. We know where to go, to McFarlanes, don't you know? Whether it's warm clothing from Carhartt, salt and ice melt, or Bridgestone snow tires for when their driving gets tough, the winter warriors at McFarlanes will get you back in your comfy chair in no time flat. McFarlanes, 780 Carolina Street, 1 block south of Highway 12, where service is a family tradition. Is that the best you've got, Storm?
Live from our studios at McFarlanes in Sauk City, this is a Very Sauk Prairie Christmas on 99.7 Max FM. Here's your host, Rauel LaBreche.
Down to Bethlehem, we can join them 3 wise men and have ourselves a swinging Christmas ball. Now I don't mean to be sacrilegious, but my need to swing is so prodigious. Makes me wanna dance around with a Christmas tree. Some may say swing's a sin, but I think all will be forgiven when the whole world swings with you and me. Because you know there's just one thing that we'd like to say. We're wishing every single one of you swinging happy holiday. Come on, Scotty, take it home. Christmas swing.
I forgot my Christmas maraca. I'm sorry. I could have been jamming with you there, Kurt.
Well, now I'm going to have to write a song called Christmas Maraca. I'm going to work on
I
that.
like it. That could be a hit.
And by the end of the show, maybe we'll have it all
yeah,
together.
There you go. So you're listening to the wonderful music of Kurt Miney and the Prairie Spies. Thanks so much for being here today, Kurt. And, of course, our special guest today, Jerry Epson, his wonderful daughter, Susan Epps Bodide. I like your last name. It's fun.
Well, thanks.
I could write a song about that too. So, but before we went off on break, we were talking about skunk grease. Thank you. Somebody remembered what we were talking about was skunk grease. I only said it like 8 times. I don't know, how you could forget, right? So, but you were talking about a skunk surrendering its skunk grease.
And I'd like to leave it just at that.
Oh, no. We can't just leave it at that, Jerry.
Well, what people don't realize is that there is not a smell at all associated with skunk grease. It's clear white, and it is a wonderful thing if you've got a cold, if your boots leak, if you need... It's just multi-purpose. And
yes, sirree, skunk grease. It cleans your car windows.
Well, it could. In fact, we go to bed with the whiskey sling and the skunk grease, and either the next morning you are either well or you've got pneumonia.
You know, I can see a cowboy walking into a Western saloon and saying, "I'll take a whiskey and the skunk grease."
Well, I could see that too.
Couldn't
yes.
you see that?
Yeah, well, that'd really be popular.
In a dirty glass. You know, Clint Eastwood is going to make that movie, I bet you, before he's done.
Sorry, I brought it up, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. I can only say.
We're talking about the kitchen.
Yeah. Well,
I never got past the stove. I wanted to get to the icebox.
Over to the sink.
Icebox.
The sink and the icebox.
We have time for the icebox?
Well, sure. I'll do a quick icebox.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Quick
everybody had icebox, of course, and all summer long, 50 pounds of ice appeared. Icemen came by, and we had reasonably cool stuff all summer. But what people don't today realize is that the icebox was very important in winter as well. Because when the wood stoves went out, and it was 35 below zero outside, the inside of the house was cold as a deep freeze. So to keep anything we didn't want to freeze, we put in the ice box in the wintertime because it was insulated.
Right.
It was a little weird, but that's the truth.
You do what works back in the day.
Anyway, I could say a lot more about the kitchen, but that's a brief introduction.
So an icebox, it was a dual purpose. It was a multitasking.
Something like
icebox.
that, yes.
Yeah, yes. What we call it today, something like that. So, you know, we've got one last story to tell, but before we do, Kirk, can I have Prairie Spies do one more tune so that we get you know the full flavor of this show today? Because I don't know about you guys, but I've been having a great time. Can you tell I've been having a good time? This is just fun. And more live radio.
Hey.
Okay?
Yeah. Sure, we could do a kind of a quick one and send you out. But thank you so much for inviting me and the Prairie Spies. Jeff Garenser here. Scott Weber here.
Also a Spanish teacher, yes, folks.
Teaching in the high school and up in the hills, having on Blue Stem Farm. So thank you all so much, and thank you to everyone at McFarlanes, and happy holidays to everybody. Everybody knows this one. I woke up, looked out the window, the first dusting of snow on the ground. Gone away is that bluebird. Here to stay is a new bird, yeah. He sings a love song as we go along. We're walking in a wonderland. Here to stay, yeah, is that bluebird. I forgot the verse that starts this song, so I'll keep trying to sing it as I go along. Confused in the winter wonderland. Oh, in the meadow we can build a snowman. Pretend he's Parson Brown, oh. He says, are you married? We'll say, no, man. You can do the job while we're in town. And later on, by the fire, man will sit and conspire. No longer afraid of the plans that we made. Walking in a winter wonderland. Come on, Scott. We can build a snowman, pretend he is Parson Brown. Says, are you married? We'll say, no, man, but you can do the job while we're in town. And later on, by the fire, we'll sit and we'll conspire. We're no longer afraid of the plans that we made. Walking in a winter wonderland, you're no longer afraid of the plans that we made. Walking in a winter wonderland. One more time. Sorry, I forgot that first verse. That's never happened before. That's live radio for you.
Down at River Arts on Water doing a little holiday concert, and I did a couple of tunes, and I did the world's worst instrumental bridge. The worst. And I told people, you know, thank God you were here to hear in Sauk Prairie, the world's worst instrumental bridge. You'll be able to remember. That'll be a story someday to tell.
Yes. Are you writing it down?
No, I'm still percolating on it. I'm trying to find the right words to describe just how horrible it was. So there probably aren't words quite for that horrible. But anyways, Jerry, I came back to this last year, and I want to come back to it again. You're one of your books that you've written, which, how many have you written? 20-something?
Quite a few.
Yeah. You stopped counting?
More than 20.
More than 20.
30.
30-something. So get going on your story, folks, because you got a lot of ways to go before you catch up with Jerry Apps. So, but you have one book, The Quiet Season, which is Remembering Country Winters. Takes us back kind of to our theme, too, of the going Christmas on the farm. But there's a story at the end of there of going to visit a family, the Davises, that you actually included in a movie that you made, too, a film.
Yeah, that was it was a part of the documentary on, let's see, it was called Farm Winter that PBS produced.
So, which they have made several specials.
In fact, it won an Emmy Award, that show.
Boy.
Yeah.
Excellent. No small accomplishment. So,
well, I'm supposed to be a writer, not a TV guy.
Oh,
so.
well, you know. But you do have a face for radio, right?
I do have a face for I love radio.
Yeah, me too. No one has to, oh, boy, he's put on a lot of weight. So you don't have to worry about that. So, but that story of the Davises is still, it's one of those things that if you haven't read this book, please, if you can afford one book today, well, I mean, you're going to have to afford the cookbook, yeah. I mean, if you can afford 4 books, so these would be the ones to get. And then you have the book with your son that you did that has a bunch of pictures that you took, right?
Yep.
So just wonderful one. In fact, I have the book about limping through life because you and I both have had polio.
That's the polio story that I told a little bit.
I really identified with that because a lot of the battles that you had, I was past a lot of that, but still deal with it. So, but anyways, tell the story about the Davises.
Well, we didn't have much on our farm. We on Christmas morning, we would open our presents and we would have one toy that we would have selected from the Sears Roebuck catalog, and one piece of clothing. And then once we had finished with breakfast and taken care of the barn chores, my mother would send us down to the Davises, and because she knew that they had less than we, and that they likely had nothing for Christmas. And so she would bake a pie, and my 2 brothers and I would walk down to Davis's place, half a mile or so, and they were always so happy to see us. And as we looked around on that Christmas day, there was nothing, no Christmas tree, no decorations, nothing whatever. And Alan lived there with his daughter. His wife had died some years previous, and they were just dirt poor. And we brought along from my mother had purchased a pair of work gloves, probably 29-cent work gloves. And she also purchased a little frilly handkerchief that would be for Catherine. Catherine was probably in her 20s at that time. And we arrived there, and they were so happy to see us, as I'd mentioned. And then they opened the presents. And Alan opened a little present with the work gloves, and he said, well, you be sure and tell your mother thank you because we really appreciate it. And then Catherine, who had, can you imagine somebody in their 20s living like she was living? And she opened the little present and found this little frilly handkerchief. And tears appeared in her eyes. And she probably remembered a better Christmas when she was younger, when her mother was still alive. And she said, with tears in her eyes, she said, be sure and tell your mother thank you as well. And I have never forgotten that experience, because when we think about Christmas today, we think about presents piled up and Christmas tree and decorations and all kinds of celebrations and fancy meals. And we forget sometimes that there are people that have not much. And something as simple as a pair of work gloves and a frilly handkerchief and an apple pie made all the difference in Christmas in that year back. It must have been during World War II in the 40s. It was one of those occasions where, well, when you see it firsthand and experience it, you never forget it.
I'm looking at, yeah, please. These are your words. I love the way you finished that chapter. I've never forgotten how thankful they were for the simple gifts we gave them, or their joy in having my brothers and me visit them on what must have been a lonely day. Pa often reminded us that we all had a responsibility to look after our neighbors, especially on holidays, but every other day as well. Mm-hmm. That's You know, and the beauty of it, it doesn't take much. It really doesn't.
It's just simple. See, we didn't have much. But just a simple pair of work gloves and a frilly handkerchief and an apple pie.
Yeah.
Made all the difference.
Yeah. I keep thinking of the scripture, 'tis more blessed to give than to receive. Yeah. So, and the blessings that came from that as a result of that. So, do you have memories like that? I mean, you grew up with those stories, Susan, right? That you would tell?
We did. We grew up with the same situation he was telling. When we went to visit our grandparents at their farm, in the evening after dinner, we would just sit in the living room. And I can remember sitting there with my grandpa and my dad and his brothers, and they would just tell stories, and we just got a big kick out of it because we sat and tried to figure out which was real and which wasn't, and it was just so much fun.
You didn't have somebody in the background. He's a liar.
No,
everything out of his mouth.
Especially with fishing. You know, a good fishing story. The fish change
Wayne
size.
Wyttenbach will tell you fishing stories. Let me tell you, that guy's got the one that got away is always.
It was the best entertainment ever.
Yeah. I encourage people to do that this Christmas season. Whenever you get together with family, tell stories. Tell those stories. My mom was great at that too. She just was always telling stories, and it imbues you with a sense of your family, and a sense of the things that are important. And
one of the one-liners I use in my writing classes is this: because when we're writing stories, we're capturing history. And I tell my students, when we forget our histories, we forget who we are.
Indeed.
That's a powerful statement.
Indeed.
When we forget our histories, we forget who we are.
Well, folks, our guests today on Very Sauk Prairie Christmas have been Jerry Epps, the inestimable Jerry Epps, and his wonderful daughter, Susan Epps Bodilli. Thank you so much for being here and talking with us. Jerry's going to be staying here for a while yet and signing autographs. So if you were listening to the broadcast and you want to get down here before 2 o'clock, right? Yep. You'll be signing books, and you can get the cookbook, you can get Quiet Season, you can get them all. They're here available. So please come on down. Thank you, our radio audience, for joining us today. It was great having people to applaud and of course, our musical guest, Kurt Miney and the Prairie Spies. Kurt, take us out with some music here on 99.7 Max
Sure,
FM.
okay,
Would you please?
Let's do, everyone can sing this one. Everybody knows this one. Let's do this one. Well, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where the treetops listen and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow. Come on, everybody. Well, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, with every Christmas card I write.
This has been a Very Sauk Prairie Christmas, live from McFarlanes in Sauk City. Today's show was brought to you by McFarlanes, Sophie's Fine Jewelry and Gifts, Prairie Plumbing and Heating, Consumers Co-op, and Wyttenbach Meats. We invite you to stop out and join us in person at McFarlanes every Saturday at 10 a.m. now through December 23rd for this special live broadcast. Thanks for joining us, and may you have a very merry Sauk Prairie Christmas.